Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It is July 6th, 2022, and this is your Ukraine update, and we may have some more information about where the Russians are going to attack next. Let's get into it. So, as you can see here, right, there have been, once again, minimal changes to the front. There is a small amount of consolidation up near Kharkiv, right? You can see here the Russians have advanced all the way to the river. These sort of rivers are natural front lines. They're very difficult to cross from a military perspective. So it's fitting and makes sense that the Ukrainians would just simply want to say, hey, let's hold the Russians at this major river. The other major change that we've seen, and I'm using major in very serious quotation marks here because there's just not a lot of change to the front lines at all, is around the Kherson region. You can see there's some trading of territory, some very minor gains by Ukraine. Here we're talking less than a mile of territory, and some minor gains by Russia up here. Again, probably less than a square mile of total territory. So these may just be kind of the ebb and flow of map updates. They don't really appear to be significant, though some reports say that Ukrainian forces are continuing to liberate towns and villages outside of Kherson, but those reports don't appear to be confirmed, so I don't think they've made their way to this map yet. Here at the Lysychansk, Kramatorsk front, you can see there's literally no change. The Russians, as we talked about, likely going to be digging in here along this front line. Putin and Russian officials have taken definitely something of a victory lap, celebrating the seizure of Lysychansk. And the reports seem to indicate, right, that Russian troops are beginning to move south towards Donetsk. And Donetsk is, of course, a oblast within Ukraine. It forms the second part, so to speak, of the two breakaway states that Russia is trying to create here. The LNR, the Luhansk People's Republic, and to the south of that, the Donetsk People's Republic, the DNR. Right now, you can see the major city in Donetsk, the DNR, Donetsk, is mostly Russian controlled at this point. But what's interesting and tactically very important, and I think probably the first operational objective of Russian forces, if they are indeed trying to seize Donetsk, is to take the airport. Right? The airport is really important to them because obviously it lets them land and deploy aircraft. And if you can land and deploy aircraft, it's going to allow you to move broken equipment, wounded soldiers away from the front, and bring soldiers to the front. So you could fly them in more or less directly from other military bases, Volgograd. You could fly them even in directly from Moscow or Minsk. Well, maybe not directly from Minsk, but you could fly them in directly from Moscow. And that would be would allow them to solve a lot of significant logistical issues, as right now, the further they get into Ukrainian territory, the harder it can be to keep troops outfitted, right? It's called outrunning your supply lines. And while the Russians have been pretty disciplined here in the east about not pushing harder than they can sustain, you know, as we've talked about, taking bite-sized chunks of territory, it still poses logistical issues, and anything you can do to make your logistics easier is going to be pretty significant. So this airport is definitely a operationally significant target. And I think that's the next place they'll push. Again, they literally control half of the airport. Ukrainians control presumably the other half. But again, an airport's only as good as its runway, and you can't have a runway being contested on an operational airport. Now, the larger objective I maintain is going to be seizing larger parts of the Donetsk Oblast, right? That's denoted by this broken line here, I believe. And you can see there's still a fair amount of territory that needs to be taken. The two largest cities of the region are here, Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. They are, of course, not too far removed. If you wanted to seize these two territories, your best bet, if you were Russia, probably to push from the Bohorichne region, where they've successfully established a bridgehead, but have been held in place by the 80th and 81st Airborne and Air Assault Ukrainian regiments. So, but if they were able to put more robust forces on this side, you can see there's not a lot of territory or not a lot of natural obstacles that would stop them from pushing from here, Bohorodichne, south to Sloviansk. Only this sort of river canal system is the only real constraint, that and this forested region here. But again, as we've seen in previous weeks, right, the Russians were able to actually do a pretty good job of exploiting this forest here as cover to stage their troops when they pushed towards Bohorodichne. So again, I think most likely the next major push you're going to see from Russian forces, they're going to need probably a week to maneuver into Donetsk, prepare for an attack, and then their first bite-sized chunk is probably going to take them right up to this M30 highway, seize the entirety of the airport, give themselves a kilometer or two of standoff, and that would allow them to start to consider putting the airport back to operational status, which will facilitate a further offensive in the Donetsk region. All in all, guys, other news updates, as we've talked about, the Putin taking his victory lap and then focusing his attention on the Donetsk region. Right. So the question is, will Ukraine be able to reposition its forces in time? Let's see where they're at now, though it's not going to be clear, right? These maps are always, especially when it comes to individual unit deployments, they're always going to be delayed. You can see here they have units scattered all throughout this region, trying to hold this front line in place. But in the Donetsk area, right here, you can see it's much lighter. There's a lot of Ukrainian forces to the north. You have at least a mechanized infantry brigade, the 30th. Looks like the 46th Airborne Brigade, a special police, or a police, looks like a battalion. And then as you get south, you see it's just a little lighter. It's 1, 2, 3 regiments, plus a special police regiment, plus this 46th. I think that's supposed to be the Dark Angels, one of the Foreign Legion volunteers, I think. I'm not really sure. But you can see it's just so much more spread out than you have in Lysychansk, right? So as Russia moves its forces, Ukraine will also have to reposition its forces. Anyway, guys, that is all I had. If you want some breakdowns of combat videos that are too spicy for YouTube, I just can't monetize them, you want to become a member of the Patreon. Thanks to all of our patrons, but especially the Lieutenant tier patrons. I'll see you guys in the next one.